The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the weathered hotel, and Rebecca Kensington stumbled out into the dusty street of Centralia, Kansas. Her crisp Boston dress, already coated in a layer of prairie dirt, her heart hammering with the realization that she had made the biggest mistake of her life. 3 weeks ago, answering a mail-order bride advertisement had seemed like destiny. But now, standing in this God-forsaken frontier town in the summer of 1878, she wanted nothing more than to climb back into that coach and disappear. The driver tossed her trunk down with a thud that sent more dust swirling into the air. Rebecca coughed, pressing her handkerchief to her mouth, squinting against the harsh midday sun. The town stretched before her in a collection of wooden buildings that looked like they might blow away in a strong wind. Men in worn hats and dusty boots lined the wooden boardwalks, staring at her with open curiosity. She felt their eyes crawling over her like insects, and she clutched her reticule tighter. A portly man with a silver star pinned to his vest approached her, removing his hat. "Miss Kensington, I presume?" "Yes," Rebecca managed, her throat dry from the journey. "Sheriff Morton." "I am afraid I have some difficult news, miss. The gentleman who sent for you, Mr. Wickham, he passed away 4 days ago. Pneumonia took him quick." The words should have devastated her, but instead, Rebecca felt a strange rush of relief followed immediately by panic. "He is dead." "Yes, miss." "I am terribly sorry. We did not have time to send word to stop your journey." Rebecca swayed slightly, the summer heat pressing down on her like a physical weight. She had never met Horace Wickham, had only exchanged 3 letters with him, but he had been her escape from her brother-in-law's house in Boston, from the pitying looks and the constant reminders that she was a burden at 23 years old with no prospects. "I see," she said quietly. "Then I suppose I shall take the next stage back." "That would be next Tuesday, miss. 5 days from now. 5 days." Rebecca calculated the money in her reticule. She had $47 to her name, everything she had saved from selling her mother's jewelry. "How much is the hotel?" $2 a night, including meals. $10 she could not spare. Rebecca felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the panic that had been her constant companion since her parents died 2 years ago. She was stranded in a town where she knew no one, with a dead fiancé and not enough money to survive. "Miss, if you need work for a few days, Mrs. Patterson, who runs the hotel, is always looking for help. She is a good woman, fair wages." Rebecca nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She had never worked a day in her life, raised to be a proper lady, to manage a household and entertain guests. What did she know about washing linens or scrubbing floors? The hotel proved to be cleaner than she expected, with a decent dining room that smelled of beef stew and fresh bread. Mrs. Patterson, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and capable hands, agreed to give Rebecca room and board in exchange for help with the cooking and cleaning. That first evening, Rebecca sat in her small room under the eaves, listening to the sounds of the town settling into night. Piano music drifted from a saloon down the street, accompanied by raucous laughter. Somewhere a dog barked. She pressed her forehead against the window glass, cool despite the summer heat, and let herself cry for the first time since leaving Boston. The next morning, Mrs. Patterson woke her before dawn. "Time to earn your keep, dear. Kitchen needs the fire started." Rebecca had never started a fire in her life. She had watched servants do it countless times, but her first 3 attempts resulted in nothing but smoke and Mrs. Patterson's patient instruction. By the time she managed a decent flame, her hands were black with soot and her eyes watered. "You will get the hang of it," Mrs. Patterson assured her, already mixing dough for biscuits. "Now you can start on those potatoes. Need them peeled and cut for the breakfast hash." The knife felt awkward in Rebecca's hands, and she worked slowly, aware that she was probably doing everything wrong. Other guests began filtering into the dining room, and Mrs. Patterson hurried out with coffee and plates of food, leaving Rebecca alone with her potatoes and her doubts. Had she really thought she could survive out here? She was useless, a burden just like her brother-in-law had said. Perhaps she should use her remaining money for the ticket back to Boston and throw herself on their mercy once more. She was so lost in her miserable thoughts that she did not hear the back door open or the footsteps on the kitchen floor until a voice said, "You are going to cut yourself holding the knife like that." Rebecca jumped, nearly dropping the knife. She spun around to find a man standing just inside the doorway, tall and lean with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. He wore dusty work clothes and a worn hat in his hands, his eyes an startling shade of green that seemed to catch the morning light. "I am sorry," he said quickly. "Did not mean to startle you. I am Quentin Calloway. I do work for Mrs. Patterson sometimes, fixing things around the place. Back door was sticking, came to oil the hinges." Rebecca set down the knife, her heart still racing. "Mr. Calloway, just Quentin is fine." "You must be the lady who came in on yesterday's stage. Word travels fast in a small town. Rebecca Kensington." She did not offer any explanation for her presence, and he did not ask. He moved past her to examine the door, pulling a small tin of oil from his pocket. Rebecca turned back to her potatoes, acutely aware of him working behind her. After a moment, he said, "If you hold the knife like this, angled down, you will have better control, less likely to slip and cut yourself." He demonstrated in the air, and Rebecca tried to mimic the angle. Her next cut was cleaner, easier. "There you go," Quentin said, a note of approval in his voice. "You are not from around here, Boston." The word came out sharper than she intended, defensive. "Long way from home." "I have no home." The admission surprised her. She had not meant to say it. Quentin did not respond right away, just kept working on the door, the hinges creaking as he opened and closed it, testing the movement. Finally, he said, "Kansas has a way of becoming home if you let it. Takes some getting used to, though." "I am not staying," Rebecca said firmly. "I leave Tuesday on the stage." "Fair enough." He did not sound judgmental, just accepting. "Well, if you are here until then and you need anything, Mrs. Patterson knows where to find me. I have a small ranch about 3 miles out of town. Raise horses mostly." "Thank you." Rebecca kept her eyes on the potatoes, but she could feel him watching her. "Welcome to Centralia, Miss Kensington. Hope your stay is better than you are expecting." He left through the back door, and Rebecca heard him whistling as he walked away. She stood there for a moment, knife in hand, wondering why that brief encounter had left her feeling oddly unsettled. The days developed a rhythm. Rebecca rose before dawn, fumbled with the kitchen fire until it caught, helped Mrs. Patterson prepare breakfast for the hotel guests. She learned to crack eggs without getting shells in the bowl, to flip bacon without burning it, to pour coffee without spilling. Her hands, once soft and pale, developed calluses and small burns. Her back ached from bending over the washboard, scrubbing linens until her arms trembled. But something else happened too. Mrs. Patterson was patient, explaining things without making Rebecca feel stupid. The hotel guests were mostly polite, thanking her for the meals even when the biscuits came out too hard or the gravy too thin. And when the sun set each evening, Rebecca found herself sitting on the back steps of the hotel, watching the vast Kansas sky turn brilliant shades of orange and pink, feeling something she had not felt in years. Useful. Quentin came by every morning. Sometimes he fixed things, a loose board on the front steps, a window that would not open properly, a wobbly table leg. Other times he just brought fresh milk from his ranch or eggs from his chickens. He always stopped in the kitchen, exchanging a few words with Mrs. Patterson, nodding to Rebecca. On her third morning, he brought a basket of strawberries. "First of the season," he told Mrs. Patterson. "Thought they might make a nice addition to breakfast." "You are too good to us, Quentin," Mrs. Patterson said warmly. "Rebecca, why don't you make some strawberry preserves? We have plenty of sugar, and it would be a treat for the guests." Rebecca stared at the berries, panic rising. "I don't know how." "I will show you," Mrs. Patterson said. "It is simple once you know the trick." Quentin leaned against the counter, watching as Mrs. Patterson explained the process. Rebecca felt self-conscious with him there, certain she would make a mistake. But his presence was oddly comforting, and when she glanced at him, he gave her an encouraging nod. "You are doing fine," he said quietly. "First time I tried to make anything in a kitchen, I nearly burned down the barn." "How does one burn down a barn making food?" Rebecca asked before she could stop herself. "Poor planning and a lot of stupidity," Quentin admitted with a laugh. "I was 14 and thought I could heat up some beans over an open flame, knock the whole pot over into some hay. Lucky my father saw the smoke." Rebecca found herself smiling, some of the tension easing from her shoulders. "I suppose I have not done anything that catastrophic yet. Give it time," Quentin teased. "Though I have faith in you, Miss Kensington." She did not know why, but his faith mattered. This stranger who owed her nothing, who barely knew her, believed she could make strawberry preserves and survive in this wild place. It was more than her own family had offered. That evening, as Rebecca sat on the back steps, Quentin rode up on a beautiful chestnut mare. He dismounted and led the horse to the water trough, letting her drink before turning to Rebecca. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Rebecca shook her head, and he settled onto the step beside her, not too close but near enough that she could smell the scent of leather and sunshine on his clothes. "You did good work today," he said. "Mrs. Patterson was bragging about those preserves all afternoon. She is kind. She is honest. If they were not good, she would not have said anything at all." Quentin stretched his legs out, crossing them at the ankle. "So, Boston. What brought you all the way out here?" Rebecca had been expecting the question, dreading it. "I was meant to marry Mr. Wickham. Horace Wickham, the banker who passed. Yes, we never met. It was an arrangement." She did not mention that it had been her last desperate option, that she had been terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Quentin was quiet for a moment. "Must have been hard, coming all this way for nothing." "It was foolish," Rebecca said bitterly. "Coming to marry a stranger, thinking it would solve everything. Desperate times make us do things we would not normally consider. That is not foolish. That is survival." His understanding caught her off guard. "You sound as though you speak from experience." "My parents died when I was 15, Quentin said, his voice even but carrying an undercurrent of old pain. "Cholera. I had 2 younger sisters to take care of, barely knew how to take care of myself. Did a lot of things I am not proud of, just trying to keep us fed and clothed." "Your sisters?" Rebecca asked softly. "Sarah got married 3 years ago, moved to Colorado with her husband. Martha teaches school in Topeka. They are both happy, doing well. Took a long time to get there, though. You raised them alone, not much choice. Neighbors helped where they could, but people have their own problems. The ranch was paid for, so we had a roof over our heads at least. I learned to break horses, found out I had a knack for it. Started earning money that way." Rebecca looked at him with new eyes, seeing the strength that came from hardship survived. "That must have been incredibly difficult. Some days more than others." Quentin glanced at her. "Point is, we all do what we have to do. You coming out here, trying to make a life even when the circumstances are not what you expected, that takes courage." "I don't feel courageous. I feel terrified. Courage is being terrified and doing it anyway." He stood, brushing dust from his pants. "You are going to be fine, Miss Kensington. Whether you stay or go back to Boston, you are stronger than you think." He tipped his hat to her and mounted his horse, riding off into the gathering darkness. Rebecca sat there long after he was gone, his words echoing in her mind. Sunday brought a rare afternoon off. Mrs. Patterson insisted Rebecca take a few hours to explore the town, to get some fresh air that was not filled with cooking smoke and laundry steam. Rebecca changed into her second dress, a simple gray cotton that was more practical than her traveling dress, and stepped out into the bright sunshine. Centralia was busier on Sundays, families coming into town for church services and socializing. Rebecca walked down the main street, peering into shop windows. The general store had a display of fabric bolts, and she paused to admire a deep blue calico that reminded her of summer skies. "Pretty, is it not?" Rebecca turned to find a young woman beside her, perhaps her own age, with auburn hair and a friendly smile. She wore a simple but well-made dress and carried a basket over her arm. "It is lovely," Rebecca agreed. "I am Emily Watson. I don't think we have met." "Rebecca Kensington. I am staying at Mrs. Patterson's hotel temporarily." "Oh, you are the lady from Boston. Everyone has been talking about you." Emily's expression turned sympathetic. "I am sorry about Mr. Wickham. That must have been a terrible shock." "Thank you." Rebecca did not know what else to say. "Are you really leaving on Tuesday? Or has Mrs. Patterson convinced you to stay? She has a way of making people feel at home." "I have a return ticket," Rebecca said, but the words felt less certain than they had a few days ago. "Well, if you change your mind, we could always use more civilized women in this town. Too many rough cowboys and not enough proper ladies." Emily laughed. "Come, walk with me. I will show you the best spots in Centralia, though I warn you it won't take long." Emily proved to be delightful company, chattering about the town and its inhabitants with affectionate humor. She pointed out the church, the school where she sometimes helped with the younger children, the blacksmith shop run by her father. "That is Quentin Calloway's ranch land over there," Emily said, gesturing to the open prairie stretching beyond the town. "He has the best horses in the county. My father shoes them sometimes. Quentin is a good man, quiet but dependable. Every unmarried woman in 3 counties has set her cap for him at one point or another." Rebecca felt a strange flutter in her chest. "Has he ever been married?" "No, though not for lack of opportunity. I think he is waiting for the right woman. He is not the type to settle just because it is expected." Emily glanced at her curiously. "Why, are you interested?" "I barely know him," Rebecca said quickly. "He has been kind, that is all. Quentin is kind to everyone. But I have seen the way he looks at you, and it is different." Emily grinned. "Just an observation." Before Rebecca could respond, a commotion erupted from the saloon across the street. 2 men stumbled out, shouting at each other, clearly drunk despite the early hour. One shoved the other, and suddenly they were throwing punches, rolling in the dust. Emily sighed. The Henderson brothers. They do this about once a month, usually over something stupid. The sheriff appeared, pulling the 2 men apart with practiced ease. "Break it up. You 2 want to spend the night in jail again." The brothers muttered apologies, still glaring at each other, and staggered off in opposite directions. The small crowd that had gathered to watch dispersed, the excitement over. "Welcome to Sunday entertainment in Centralia," Emily said dryly. "Not quite what you are used to in Boston, I would wager." "No," Rebecca admitted, "though it is certainly never boring." They continued their walk, and Emily introduced Rebecca to several other townspeople. Everyone was curious but polite, welcoming her in a way Rebecca had not experienced in Boston's strict social circles. There was no judgment about her circumstances, no pitying looks or whispered gossip. They simply accepted her as someone new who might or might not stay. When Rebecca returned to the hotel late in the afternoon, she found Quentin in the small stable behind the building, checking on Mrs. Patterson's old draft horse. "How is he?" Rebecca asked. Quentin looked up, surprise crossing his face. "Hey, he is good, just getting up in years. Mrs. Patterson worries about him. She has a kind heart." "That she does." Quentin finished his examination and gave the horse a pat. "How was your afternoon?" "Pleasant. I met Emily Watson. She showed me around town." "Emily is good people. Known her since we were children." He stepped out of the stall, latching it behind him. "What did you think of Centralia?" Rebecca considered the question. "It is different from what I expected. Rougher in some ways, but warmer too. People here seem genuine. We cannot afford not to be. Out here, you depend on your neighbors. Pretense doesn't survive long on the frontier." He studied her face. "You have some color in your cheeks. The sun agrees with you." Rebecca touched her face self-consciously. "I must look like a field hand. You look healthy. Happy, maybe." Quentin picked up his hat from where it hung on a post. "Tuesday is still a couple days away. You seem less certain about leaving." "I don't know what I am certain about anymore," Rebecca admitted. "Everything I thought I knew has been turned upside down. Sometimes that is when real clarity comes. When all the plans fall apart and you have to figure out what you actually want instead of what you think you should want. And what if what I want is impossible?" Quentin stepped closer, close enough that Rebecca had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "What makes you think it is impossible?" Her breath caught. They were standing too close, improper by any standard, but Rebecca could not make herself step back. "I have no money, no prospects, no skills that are useful here. You have learned more in 4 days than some people learn in a year. You are smart and adaptable. Those are the most important skills out here." His voice dropped lower. "And as for money and prospects, those can be built. The question is, do you want to build them here?" "I don't know," Rebecca whispered, but it was a lie. Somewhere in the last few days she had started to know. She just did not have the courage to admit it yet. Quentin reached out slowly, giving her time to move away, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were rough with calluses but gentle. "You don't have to decide today, but I hope you will consider staying. I think Kansas needs someone like you. I think Centralia needs you." "And what about you?" The bold question escaped before Rebecca could stop it. "Do you need me?" Something flashed in Quentin's eyes, something intense and hungry that made Rebecca's heart race. "I think that is a dangerous question, Miss Kensington." "Why?" "Because if I answer honestly, I might scare you away, and you only just got here." They stood there in the stable. The world narrowed down to the space between them, the golden afternoon light slanting through the cracks in the walls. Rebecca knew she should step back, should maintain proper distance, but every rule she had been taught seemed irrelevant here. "I should go help Mrs. Patterson with supper," she finally said. "Probably," Quentin agreed, but neither of them moved. Finally, it was Quentin who stepped back, breaking the spell. "I will see you tomorrow, Rebecca." He used her first name, and she liked the sound of it in his voice, warm and intimate. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and hurried back to the hotel. That night, Rebecca lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow was Monday. Tuesday the stage would come, and she would have to make a decision. Return to Boston and the life of a dependent spinster, or stay in Centralia with no guarantee of anything except hard work and uncertainty. And Quentin. Stay and see what could develop between them. This thing that had sparked to life so quickly it terrified her. She had come to Kansas with so many doubts. Doubts about her ability to survive, about the wisdom of marrying a stranger, about her worth in a world that seemed to have no place for women like her. And somehow, without her quite realizing it was happening, those doubts had begun to fade. Quentin had done that. With his quiet confidence, his patience, his belief in her capability, he had not tried to rescue her or tell her what to do. He had simply treated her like an equal, someone worthy of respect and consideration. Rebecca rolled onto her side, hugging her pillow. She had known him less than a week. It was madness to feel this way, this pull toward him that grew stronger every time they spoke. But when had her life ever followed a sensible path? Every safe, practical choice she had made had led to disappointment. Maybe it was time to make a choice based on hope instead of fear. Monday morning dawned gray and threatening rain. The air felt heavy, charged with electricity, and Mrs. Patterson hurried Rebecca through the breakfast preparations so they could secure the shutters before the storm hit. Kansas weather, Mrs. Patterson explained as they worked. Changes faster than a fickle woman's mind. Could be sunshine this afternoon or could rain for 3 days straight. They were closing the last shutter when Quentin rode up, his horse dancing nervously. "Storm is going to be a big one. You ladies need any help securing things?" "We are nearly done," Mrs. Patterson said. "But thank you. Will your horses be all right? They are in the barn. They will be fine. I wanted to make sure you two were prepared." His eyes found Rebecca's. "I am going to stay in town until this passes. The hotel has a room." "Always room for you, Quentin," Mrs. Patterson said warmly. The first drops of rain began to fall, fat and heavy, and they all hurried inside. Within minutes, the rain became a deluge, pounding on the roof and streaming down the windows. Thunder rolled across the prairie, and lightning lit up the dark interior of the hotel. Rebecca helped Mrs. Patterson light lamps against the gloom. The handful of guests gathered in the dining room, the storm giving everyone an excuse to huddle together. Quentin sat at a corner table, nursing a cup of coffee, his eyes tracking Rebecca as she moved around the room. By afternoon, the storm showed no signs of letting up. The wind howled, rattling the shutters, and the rain fell in sheets. One of the guests, an elderly traveling salesman, entertained the group with stories from his years on the road. Rebecca found herself sitting at Quentin's table, drawn to his quiet presence in the midst of the storm's chaos. "Does it storm like this often?" she asked. "Few times a summer." "Spring is worse, tornadoes then. This is just a good old-fashioned thunderstorm." He took a sip of coffee. "You get used to it." Add it to the list of things I would need to get used to. Still thinking about leaving tomorrow, Rebecca watched the rain streaming down the window. "The stage might not even run in this weather." "Might not," Quentin agreed, "but that is avoiding the question." "I have been avoiding a lot of questions lately." She turned to face him. "Why did you stay in town? Your ranch will be fine without you for a few hours." "Honestly." Quentin set down his cup. "I wanted to make sure you were safe, and I wanted to spend a little more time with you before you potentially left forever." Rebecca's heart skipped. "That is very honest. I am not good at games, Rebecca. I say what I mean. It gets me in trouble sometimes, but I would rather be straightforward than clever." "It is refreshing. In Boston, everyone speaks in layers of meaning. You have to interpret what people really want versus what they are saying." "Sounds exhausting." It was. Rebecca realized it was true. She had been constantly exhausted in Boston, trying to navigate social expectations and hidden agendas. Here in this frontier town, people said what they meant, including Quentin. "Can I ask you something?" Quentin leaned forward slightly. "What are you most afraid of?" The question caught Rebecca off guard. "About staying or about leaving?" "Either." "Both," she considered carefully. "If I stay, I am afraid of failing, of discovering I truly am as useless as my family believed, of becoming a burden to Mrs. Patterson or to anyone else who tries to help me. And if you leave, I am afraid of regret, of wondering what might have happened if I had been brave enough to try." She met his eyes. "I'm afraid of never seeing you again." Quentin's expression softened. "I am afraid of the same thing. We barely know each other. I know you are strong, even though you don't believe it yet. I know you are kind, because I have seen how you treat Mrs. Patterson and the hotel guests. I know you are willing to learn and work hard. And I know that when you smile, which you don't do nearly enough, it feels like the sun coming out after a storm." He paused. "That is enough for me to want to know more, to want to know everything." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "What if I disappoint you?" "Not possible. You are already more than I expected to find in this world." The dining room felt too public for the emotion swelling in Rebecca's chest. She stood abruptly. "Excuse me, I need some air." She fled to the kitchen, leaning against the counter, trying to catch her breath. The back door beckoned, but the rain still poured down, trapping her inside with her turbulent thoughts. Footsteps behind her, and then Quentin's voice, gentle. "I am sorry. I did not mean to overwhelm you." "You did not. I mean, you did, but not in a bad way." Rebecca turned to face him. "No one has ever spoken to me like that before, with such honesty and without expecting anything in return." "I do expect something in return," Quentin said. "I expect you to be equally honest with me. Tell me what you are really thinking, Rebecca. Not what you think you should say or what is proper. What do you want?" It was the same question she had been avoiding for days, maybe for years. What did she want? Not what her parents had wanted for her, or what society expected, or what was sensible and practical. What did Rebecca Kensington, stripped of all pretense and obligation, truly want? She looked at Quentin, standing there in his worn work clothes, his hair slightly messy, his green eyes steady and patient. This man who fixed things and raised horses and had taken care of his sisters when he was barely more than a child himself. This man who saw something in her worth believing in. "I want to stay," she whispered. "I want to build something here. I want to stop being afraid all the time. And I want to know you better. I want to see where this leads." Quentin closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I am going to kiss you now, if that is all right." Rebecca barely had time to nod before his lips were on hers, gentle but sure, tasting like coffee and promise. She had been kissed before, chased pecks from would-be suitors in Boston who were more interested in her family connections than in her. This was nothing like those cold exchanges. This was warmth spreading through her entire body, her hands coming up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer. This was Quentin's hand sliding into her hair, cradling her head as he deepened the kiss. This was the rest of the world falling away until there was only this moment, this man, this feeling of rightness that Rebecca had never experienced before. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quentin rested his forehead against hers. "So you are staying?" It was not a question, but Rebecca answered anyway. "I am staying." "Thank God," Quentin breathed and kissed her again. The storm raged outside, but inside the kitchen of Mrs. Patterson's hotel, Rebecca Kensington found the thing she had been searching for without knowing it. She found home. Tuesday dawned clear and bright, the storm having washed the world clean. The stage arrived right on schedule, and Rebecca stood on the boardwalk, her trunk beside her, watching the driver load luggage. Mrs. Patterson stood next to her, holding a cloth-wrapped bundle. "Your lunch for the road," Mrs. Patterson said, then smiled. "Or rather, your lunch for right now, since you are not going anywhere." Rebecca took the bundle. "Thank you for everything, for giving me a chance when you had no reason to." "I had plenty of reason. I needed help and you needed work." The rest, well, that worked itself out nicely, did not it? Mrs. Patterson patted her arm. "You have a place here as long as you want it, but something tells me you will have your own place soon enough." Before Rebecca could ask what she meant, Quentin appeared leading 2 horses. Ready. For what? Rebecca asked. I am taking you out to see the ranch. If you are going to stay in Kansas, you should know what the land looks like beyond the town. Rebecca glanced at Mrs. Patterson, who nodded. Go on. I can manage lunch without you. Just be back before supper prep. Quentin helped Rebecca onto the chestnut mare, the same horse he had been riding the day they met. Her name is Daisy. She is gentle as a lamb. They rode out of town, Quentin leading the way on his black gelding. The prairie stretched in all directions, vast and open under the bright summer sky. Wildflowers dotted the grassland and birds wheeled overhead. Rebecca had never seen so much space, so much emptiness that somehow felt full. It is beautiful, she said. Wait until you see the ranch. They rode for about half an hour, and Rebecca found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the horse's gait. It was peaceful out here, just the sound of hoofbeats and wind through the grass. Quentin's ranch came into view, a collection of sturdy buildings clustered around a small creek. The main house was modest but well built, with a covered porch and real glass windows. The barn was larger, clearly the focus of his operation, and she could see horses in the corral, beautiful animals in various shades of brown and black and gray. This is yours, Rebecca asked as they dismounted. Every inch. Took me 8 years to get it running properly, but it is all paid for and profitable now. Pride colored his voice, the earned pride of hard work paying off. He showed her around, introducing her to each horse by name, explaining his breeding program and training methods. Rebecca found herself fascinated, not just by the horses but by Quentin's passion for his work. This was a man who had built something from nothing, who had turned tragedy into triumph. They sat on the porch of the house, eating the lunch Mrs. Patterson had packed, looking out over the land. Could you be happy here? Quentin asked. Not in town working at the hotel, but here, with me. Rebecca's heart hammered. Are you asking what I think you are asking? Not yet. Not today. But I am thinking about asking it, and I wanted you to see what I have to offer before I do. He turned to face her. I am not a rich man, Rebecca. I can provide a good life, a comfortable life, but it will never be Boston society. It will be work and early mornings and Kansas weather. It will be this ranch and these horses and me. What if I said that sounds perfect? Quentin's face broke into a wide smile, transforming his usually serious expression. Then, I would say I am the luckiest man in Kansas. They sat there in the sunshine, and Rebecca felt something settle in her chest, the last of her doubts fading away. She had come to Kansas expecting one life, and found something completely different, something infinitely better. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca split her time between the hotel and Quentin's ranch. Mrs. Patterson taught her to cook proper frontier meals, and she discovered she actually enjoyed the work, the immediate satisfaction of creating something useful. Quentin taught her to ride properly, and they spent long afternoons exploring the prairie, talking about everything and nothing. Emily Watson became a true friend, including Rebecca in her social circle. The other women in town welcomed her, teaching her the skills she would need to manage a frontier household. She learned to preserve food, to sew torn clothing, to recognize the signs of changing weather. Her hands grew rougher, her skin darker from the sun, and she felt stronger than she ever had in her life. Quentin courted her properly, with evening walks and Sunday dinners and small gifts. He brought her wildflowers, a new riding glove when he noticed hers were worn, a book of poetry from the general store. They talked about their pasts, their hopes for the future, their fears and dreams. Rebecca learned about his parents, his sisters, the hard years after their deaths. Quentin learned about her privileged childhood, the security that disappeared with her parents' deaths, her brother-in-law's cruelty disguised as concern. He told me I was a burden, Rebecca confessed one evening as they sat by the creek on Quentin's property. That no man would want a woman with no dowry and no connections. That I should be grateful he allowed me to stay in his house. He was wrong about everything, Quentin said fiercely. You are not a burden. You are capable and strong, and any man would be lucky to have you. Even a Kansas horse rancher, especially a Kansas horse rancher. He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. You make everything better, Rebecca. The food tastes better when you cook it. The sunset is prettier when you are beside me watching it. The future feels brighter knowing you are in it. I feel the same way, Rebecca whispered. I did not think I could ever feel this way about anyone, let alone someone I barely knew existed 2 months ago. 2 months, Quentin mused. Feels longer, feels like you have always been part of my life. August arrived with blazing heat. Rebecca had been in Centralia for 7 weeks, and it felt like a lifetime. She moved with confidence now, managing the hotel kitchen alongside Mrs. Patterson, helping with the books and supplies. She had become part of the town's fabric, joining the sewing circle, attending church socials, contributing to the community. But everyone knew where she spent her free time. Quentin's ranch had become her second home, and she had helped him break a particularly stubborn mare, surprising both of them with her patience and skill. You are a natural, Quentin told her, watching Rebecca work with the horse. I could use a partner in this business. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Calloway? More than a job, Miss Kensington. He climbed over the corral fence and came to stand beside her. I am offering everything I have. My land, my home, my life, if you will take it. Rebecca turned to face him, the mare forgotten. Is this a proposal? Quentin dropped to one knee right there in the dust of the corral. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple gold band with a small ruby. It was my mother's, the only valuable thing my parents owned. I have been carrying it around for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment, and I realize there is no perfect moment. Every moment with you is perfect. Rebecca Kensington, will you marry me? Will you stay in Kansas and build a life with me and let me spend every day trying to make you happy? Tears streamed down Rebecca's face. Yes, yes, of course, yes. Quentin stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed and cried simultaneously. He set her down and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. We are doing this, Rebecca said wonderingly. We are really doing this. We really are. Quentin kissed her, deep and thorough, a promise and a celebration. You came to Kansas with doubts and I got to watch them disappear, got to help them disappear. That is the greatest privilege of my life. You did not just help them disappear. You showed me who I could be when I stopped being afraid. You believed in me before I believed in myself. I fell in love with you the moment you walked into Mrs. Patterson's kitchen covered in soot from that fire, holding that potato peeler like a weapon, looking terrified and determined at the same time. Quentin cupped her face. You were the bravest thing I had ever seen. I fell in love with you when you showed me how to hold the knife properly. When you did not laugh at my ignorance but just helped me learn. Rebecca smiled through her tears. Every day since then, I have fallen more in love with you. They stood there in the corral, holding each other, while the mare watched with patient curiosity, and the Kansas sun beat down on their future. The wedding took place 3 weeks later in the small church in Centralia. Emily Watson served as Rebecca's maid of honor, and Quentin's friend Thomas Murphy, who managed the livery stable, stood up as his best man. The entire town attended, cramming into the small building, spilling out onto the steps. Rebecca wore a dress that the ladies of the sewing circle had helped her make, soft cream muslin with lace at the collar and cuffs. She carried wildflowers, the same kind Quentin had brought her that first time. Mrs. Patterson dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief, beaming with maternal pride. Quentin stood at the altar in his best suit, his hair neatly combed, his eyes locked on Rebecca as she walked down the aisle. There was no one to give her away, but she did not need anyone. She came to him freely, choosing this life, this man, this future. The minister kept the ceremony simple. "Do you, Quentin Calloway, take Rebecca Kensington to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." His voice was steady, sure. "And do you, Rebecca Kensington, take Quentin Calloway to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." She had never been more certain of anything. "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Kansas, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Quentin, you may kiss your bride." He did, sweetly and tenderly, and the congregation erupted in applause. Rebecca laughed against his lips, dizzy with joy. The reception was held at the hotel, Mrs. Patterson outdoing herself with the food. There was dancing to a fiddle player's enthusiastic tunes, toasts that ranged from heartfelt to humorous, and cake that Rebecca had helped bake, still learning but improving every day. As the sun set, Quentin and Rebecca slipped away from the celebration. They rode to the ranch under a sky full of stars, alone for the first time as husband and wife. The house looked warm and welcoming with lamps lit in the windows. Quentin had spent the previous week making improvements, adding curtains Rebecca had sewn, bringing in furniture from town, transforming the bachelor quarters into a real home. He carried her over the threshold, and Rebecca laughed at the traditional gesture. "I can walk, you know." "I know." "I wanted to do it anyway." He set her down gently in the main room, his hands lingering on her waist. "Welcome home, Mrs. Calloway." "Mrs. Calloway," Rebecca repeated, testing the name. "I like how that sounds." That night, in the bedroom Quentin had prepared with such care, they came together with tenderness and passion, discovering each other, learning what brought pleasure and joy. Rebecca had been nervous, her limited knowledge coming from whispered conversations among married women, but Quentin was patient and loving, making her feel cherished and desired. Afterwards, lying in his arms, Rebecca traced patterns on his chest. "I cannot believe I almost left. I almost got on that stage and went back to Boston. But you did not. You stayed. You took a chance. Because of you, because you made me believe I could." Quentin kissed the top of her head. "We made each other better. That is what love does." They fell asleep tangled together, the Kansas night settling peacefully around their new life. The first year of marriage was an education in compromise and partnership. Rebecca learned the rhythms of ranch life, the seasonal demands, the constant work required to keep everything running. She took over the household management, quickly proving herself capable. She kept the books, managed supplies, tended the vegetable garden she planted that first autumn. She also learned to train horses, working alongside Quentin with the young stock. She had a gentle touch and infinite patience, qualities that made her excellent at the work. They became true partners in the business, making decisions together, building something neither could have achieved alone. There were hard moments, too. A drought that first winter tested their resources. A mare that died foaling broke Rebecca's heart. Disagreements over money and priorities taught them how to fight fair and forgive quickly. But through everything, their love deepened, becoming something solid and unshakable. Spring brought Rebecca's first pregnancy. She suspected before she was sure, and when Dr. Miller confirmed it, she rode out to the north pasture where Quentin was working. "I have news," she called out. Quentin looked up from the fence he was mending, shading his eyes against the sun. One look at her face and he dropped his tools, vaulting the fence to reach her. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am perfect. We are going to have a baby." Quentin let out a whoop of joy that sent the nearby horses skittering. He picked Rebecca up and spun her around, then immediately set her down looking worried. "Sorry, should I not do that? Is it safe?" Rebecca laughed. "I am pregnant, not made of glass, but maybe save the spinning for after the baby arrives." He pressed his hand to her still flat stomach, awe on his face. "A baby, we are having a baby." "We are," Rebecca confirmed, covering his hand with hers. "Are you happy?" Happy does not even begin to cover it. He pulled her close, resting his chin on her head. "You have given me everything, Rebecca, more than I ever dreamed of having." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Rebecca continued working, adjusting her activities as her belly grew. The women of Centralia rallied around her, sharing advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Mrs. Patterson knitted tiny booties and blankets. Emily threw a party to celebrate, filling Rebecca's house with friends and laughter. Quentin was attentive to the point of being overprotective. Rebecca had to firmly tell him that she could still ride horses, still work in the garden, still cook meals. But his concern came from love, and she appreciated it even when it drove her crazy. "I am not an invalid," she reminded him for the 100th time when he tried to carry a basket of laundry for her. "I know, but you are carrying my child and I want to take care of you. You do take care of me." "Every single day. But I need to feel useful, Quentin. I need to contribute." He set down the basket and pulled her into his arms. "You contribute everything. You run this household, you help with the horses, you manage the books, and now you are growing our baby. That is more than enough." Rebecca softened, leaning into his embrace. "I just do not want to become helpless. I worked so hard to become capable." "You will never be helpless. You are the strongest person I know." He kissed her forehead. "But let me help you anyway because it makes me feel useful too." Winter arrived as Rebecca entered her final months of pregnancy. The baby was due in late January, and as the new year of 1879 began, they prepared for the arrival. Quentin built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it until it was smooth as silk. Rebecca sewed tiny gowns and blankets, her stitches neat and even, skills she had learned since coming to Kansas. The labor started on a clear, cold morning. Quentin rode to fetch Dr. Miller and Mrs. Patterson while Emily stayed with Rebecca, timing contractions and offering encouragement. "You are doing wonderfully," Emily assured her as Rebecca gripped the bedpost, breathing through another pain. "It hurts more than I expected," Rebecca gasped. "That is what all the mothers say, but it will be worth it. Just wait." By the time Quentin returned with help, the labor was progressing quickly. Dr. Miller examined Rebecca and nodded with satisfaction. "Should be a while yet, but everything looks good." Quentin refused to leave her side despite Mrs. Patterson's suggestions that he wait outside as was customary. "I am staying," he said firmly. "Rebecca, do you want me here?" "Yes," Rebecca said immediately. "Please stay." He held her hand through each contraction, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, murmuring encouragement. Hours passed, the winter sun arcing across the sky. Rebecca lost track of time, focused entirely on the work her body was doing. Finally, as afternoon shadows lengthened, Dr. Miller said, "All right, Rebecca, next contraction you push." Rebecca bore down with all her strength, Quentin supporting her, and suddenly there was a release, a moment of relief, and then the most beautiful sound in the world, a baby's cry. "It is a boy," Dr. Miller announced, placing the squalling infant on Rebecca's chest. "A healthy, strong boy." Rebecca stared at the tiny red face, the perfect miniature fingers that grasped at air, and felt love explode in her chest like nothing she had ever experienced. "A boy. Oh, Quentin, look at him." Quentin was crying, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his son. "He is perfect." "You are perfect. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you." They named him James Robert Calloway after both their fathers. Jamie, they called him, and he quickly proved to have his father's green eyes and his mother's determined spirit. Those early months were exhausting and exhilarating. Rebecca had never been so tired or so happy. She learned to function on broken sleep, to nurse while also managing household tasks, to interpret Jamie's different cries. Quentin helped as much as he could, walking the baby at night when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint, taking over more of the ranch work so Rebecca could focus on their son. "You are a natural father," Rebecca told him one evening, watching him rock Jamie to sleep, singing a soft lullaby his own mother had sung to him. "I had practice with my sisters," Quentin said, "but this is different. This is my son, my family." He looked at Rebecca with so much love it took her breath away. "You gave me this. A real home, a family. I will never stop being grateful." "We gave each other this," Rebecca corrected. "I would still be in Boston, miserable and alone, if you had not made me believe I could have something different." As Jamie grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Quentin's reputation for quality horses spread, and buyers came from as far as Dodge City and Wichita. Rebecca managed the business side, keeping meticulous records, negotiating prices, building relationships with customers. Together, they built something significant, a legacy for Jamie and any other children they might have. When Jamie was 2 years old, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she recognized the signs immediately. Quentin was just as excited, but calmer, more confident in his ability to handle fatherhood. The second pregnancy was harder. Rebecca was sicker in the early months, exhausted in ways she had not been with Jamie. But she pushed through, balancing the demands of an active toddler, a growing business, and her changing body. Their daughter arrived on a warm day in May of 1881, screaming her displeasure at the world with impressive volume. She had Rebecca's dark hair and Quentin's strong features, and they named her Clara Marie after both their mothers. "A daughter," Quentin whispered, holding the tiny bundle with the same awe he had shown with Jamie. "I have a daughter." "You have your hands full," Mrs. Patterson said cheerfully. "Girls are trickier than boys." She was right. Clara proved to be more demanding than Jamie had been, quick to anger but also quick to laughter. She kept them on their toes, and Jamie adjusted to his new role as big brother with surprising maturity. The years flowed past, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Jamie started helping with the horses, showing natural aptitude. Clara followed her brother everywhere, determined to do everything he did. The ranch continued to prosper, and they added on to the house, creating more space for their growing family. Rebecca watched Quentin teach Jamie how to break a horse, how to read the weather, how to be honest and fair in his dealings. She saw the man she loved reflected in their son's earnest efforts to live up to his father's example. She taught Clara to read, to sew, to cook, passing on skills she had learned herself in those early days at Mrs. Patterson's hotel. But she also taught her daughter to ride, to help with the horses, to be independent and capable. "You are raising her unconventionally," Emily observed one day, watching Clara help Quentin in the corral. "I am raising her to survive and thrive," Rebecca said, "the same way I learned. She can be a lady and still know how to work. Those things are not mutually exclusive." On their 10th wedding anniversary, Quentin took Rebecca back to the spot where they had first kissed, in Mrs. Patterson's kitchen. The hotel was under new management now, Mrs. Patterson having retired to live with her daughter in Kansas City, but the new owners let them have a private moment. 10 years, Rebecca marveled. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like forever." "Forever in the best way," Quentin said. "Like you have always been part of my life. I almost was not, I almost left. But you stayed. You took a chance on Kansas and on me." Rebecca turned in his arms to face him. "You erased all my doubts, every single one. I doubted I could survive out here, and you showed me I could thrive. I doubted anyone could love me for who I really am, and you loved me more than I thought possible. I doubted I had any value, and you made me believe in myself. You always had value, Rebecca. You just needed the space to discover it, and I am so grateful you discovered it here with me." They kissed in that kitchen where their love story began, and Rebecca felt the same rush of emotion she had felt 10 years ago. It had not faded or diminished. If anything, it had grown deeper, richer, tested by time and challenges and found unbreakable. The years continued their steady march. Jamie grew into a young man who took over more responsibility at the ranch, and Clara became a spirited teenager who had a gift for training the most difficult horses. Rebecca watched her children with pride, seeing the best of both herself and Quentin in them. When Jamie was 17 and Clara 14, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant again. The surprise was considerable given their ages and the years since Clara's birth, but the baby proved healthy and determined to join the family. Young Samuel Thomas arrived in the spring of 1891, a late blessing that brought renewed joy to the household. Jamie and Clara doted on their baby brother, and Quentin was just as besotted as he had been with his first 2 children. "3 children," Rebecca said one night watching Quentin rock Samuel to sleep. "We built quite a family." "We built an empire," Quentin corrected. "This ranch, our reputation, our children, everything we dreamed of when we were young and scared. Were you scared? You always seemed so confident." "Terrified," Quentin admitted. "I was falling in love with you so fast, and I was afraid you would leave, afraid you would realize you deserved better than a horse rancher with dirt under his fingernails." "You were everything I needed," Rebecca said softly. "You still are." As Samuel grew, Jamie prepared to take over the ranch operations. He had met a young woman named Sarah Fletcher, and they planned to marry in the fall. Quentin was building them a house on the property, keeping the family together but giving the young couple their independence. Clara announced her intention to become a veterinarian, a bold ambition for a woman but perfectly in character. Rebecca supported her daughter's dreams, just as Quentin had supported hers years ago. On a warm summer evening in 1898, 20 years after Rebecca had first arrived in Centralia, the extended Calloway family gathered for supper on the porch of the main house. Jamie was there with Sarah and their infant daughter. Clara was home from her studies in Kansas City. Samuel, now 7, chased fireflies in the yard. Quentin put his arm around Rebecca and she leaned into him, feeling the solid comfort of his presence. "Remember when you could not even light a fire in the kitchen?" he teased. "Remember when you thought I would leave on that Tuesday stage? Best decision I ever made, asking you to stay. Best decision I ever made, saying yes." They watched their family, the legacy of their love spread out before them. The ranch stretched into the distance, prosperous and thriving. The house was filled with laughter and love. The future looked bright. Rebecca thought about that frightened young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach 20 years ago, certain she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She thought about all the doubts she had carried, all the fears that had weighed her down. Quentin had not just erased those doubts. He had replaced them with certainty. Certainty in her own strength, in the power of love, in the possibility of building something meaningful from nothing. She turned to kiss him, this man who had given her everything, who had seen past her fears to the woman she could become. "I love you, Quentin Calloway, today and always." "I love you too, Rebecca. Thank you for staying. Thank you for building this life with me." They sat together on the porch as the sun set over the Kansas prairie, surrounded by the family they had created, secure in the love they had built. The doubts were long gone, replaced by the absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be together. The years that followed brought their own challenges and joys. Jamie and Sarah had 3 more children, filling the ranch with grandchildren. Clara graduated and opened a practice treating livestock, becoming one of the few female veterinarians in Kansas. Samuel showed promise as a businessman, helping expand the ranch's horse trading operations to multiple states. Quentin's hair turned silver, and Rebecca found gray in her own dark locks. They moved a bit slower, their bodies bearing the marks of a lifetime of hard work. But their love remained constant, the foundation everything else was built upon. On their 30th anniversary, their children threw them a party. The whole town of Centralia turned out, many of them people who had welcomed Rebecca 3 decades earlier. Emily Watson was there, now a grandmother herself, the current owners of the hotel, the minister who had married them, generations of families who had bought horses from the Calloway ranch. Speeches were made, toasting Quentin and Rebecca's enduring partnership. Stories were shared about the early days, about Rebecca learning to cook and ride, about Quentin's patient courtship. There was laughter and tears and an overwhelming sense of community. When it was Rebecca's turn to speak, she stood with Quentin's hand in hers and looked out at the gathered crowd. 30 years ago, I came to Kansas expecting one life and found something completely different. I came with doubts about my ability to survive out here, about my worth, about whether anyone could truly love me. This man beside me erased every single one of those doubts. He saw me, really saw me, and believed I could be more than I thought possible. He gave me a home, a family, a purpose. He gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams. So this anniversary is not just about 30 years of marriage. It is about 30 years of discovering who I really am and building something beautiful together. Thank you, Quentin, for everything. And thank you all for welcoming me into this community and making me one of your own. The applause was thunderous. Quentin stood and kissed her, and their children and grandchildren crowded around them, a circle of love and support. That night, alone in their bedroom, Quentin and Rebecca lay in the darkness, holding hands like young lovers. "Do you ever regret it?" Quentin asked. "Staying here instead of going back to Boston. Sometimes I wonder if you gave up too much." "Never," Rebecca said firmly. "Not for a single moment. Boston had nothing for me but obligation and loneliness. Kansas gave me everything that matters. You gave me everything that matters. You gave me the same. Before you, I had the ranch and my sisters, but something was missing. You filled that space perfectly." "We fit," Rebecca said simply. "From the very beginning, we just fit together." They drifted into sleep, still holding hands, the same way they had every night for 30 years. The years continued their march. They celebrated more anniversaries, welcomed more grandchildren, saw their children thrive. Quentin and Rebecca became the patriarch and matriarch of a sprawling family dynasty, respected throughout Kansas for their fair dealing and strong character. On Rebecca's 65th birthday, surrounded by 3 generations of Calloways, she looked around the dining table at the faces she loved most in the world. Jamie with Sarah, their children grown and starting families of their own. Clara with her husband Marcus, whom she had met through her veterinary practice. Samuel with his wife Catherine and their young children. And at the head of the table, Quentin, now 70, still strong and vital, still looking at her with the same love she had seen in his eyes that first day in Mrs. Patterson's kitchen. "What are you thinking about?" he asked her later as they prepared for bed. "About how far we have come. About that scared young woman who stepped off the stagecoach not knowing if she could survive even one day out here. She was braver than she knew. She had a good teacher." Rebecca smiled at him. "You taught me everything that mattered, not just how to cook or ride or manage a household. You taught me how to believe in myself, how to trust love, how to build something lasting." "We taught each other," Quentin said, pulling her close. "That is what the best partnerships do. We made each other better, stronger. We created something neither of us could have built alone." Rebecca rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "If I could go back and talk to that frightened young woman standing in the dust of Centralia, I would tell her not to be afraid. I would tell her that taking the chance, staying instead of leaving, would lead to the most wonderful life imaginable." "What would you tell me?" Quentin asked. "If you could go back to that young man watching you struggle with potatoes in Mrs. Patterson's kitchen." "I would tell you to kiss me sooner," Rebecca said with a laugh. "And I would tell you that the Boston lady who could not light a fire would end up being the best thing that ever happened to you." "I already knew that," Quentin murmured, "from the very first moment." They lived many more years, watching their family continue to grow and prosper. The Calloway Ranch became legendary, known across multiple states for the quality of their horses and the integrity of their business practices. But more than that, it became known as a place built on love, a testament to what two people could create when they believed in each other. Eventually, time caught up with them as it does with everyone. Quentin passed first, dying peacefully in his sleep at the age of 84 with Rebecca beside him. She held his hand as he took his last breath, whispering that she loved him, that she would see him soon. Rebecca lived another 3 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren. She remained sharp and vital until the end, still managing the ranch books, still riding when weather permitted, still sharing stories about the early days and the man she had loved for over 50 years. On a warm autumn afternoon in 1931, Rebecca sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sun set over the Kansas prairie that had become her home so many decades ago. Clara sat beside her, holding her hand. "Tell me about when you first met Papa," Clara asked, the same question she had asked hundreds of times over the years. Rebecca smiled, her eyes distant with memory. "I was covered in soot from trying to light a fire, holding a potato peeler like it was a weapon, absolutely terrified that I had made a terrible mistake coming to Kansas. And then your father walked in and showed me how to hold a knife properly. Such a small thing, but it changed everything. He did not laugh at my ignorance or pity my incompetence. He just helped me learn. You fell in love right then. I think I did, though I did not realize it yet. He saw me, really saw me, not who I was supposed to be or who society wanted me to be, but who I actually was underneath all the fear and doubt. And he believed I could be more than I thought possible." Rebecca squeezed her daughter's hand. "I came to Kansas with so many doubts, Clara. Doubts about my ability to survive, about my worth, about whether I deserved love. Your father erased them all. He gave me a life I could never have imagined, and I have been grateful every single day since." "He loved you so much," Clara said, tears in her eyes, "and I loved him. I still love him. Death does not change that. Love like ours does not end." Rebecca looked at her daughter, seeing both herself and Quentin in Clara's features. "You and your brothers, all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, you are the continuation of that love. You are proof that taking a chance, choosing hope over fear, creates something that lasts forever." That evening, Rebecca passed away in her sleep, a peaceful ending to a remarkable life. Her family mourned her deeply, but they also celebrated everything she had been and everything she had created. The funeral was attended by hundreds, people whose lives had been touched by Rebecca Calloway in ways large and small. They buried her beside Quentin on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the prairie stretching to the horizon. The headstone was simple: Rebecca Kensington Calloway, 1855–1931, beloved wife, mother, and friend. She came with doubts, he erased them all. The Calloway Ranch continued for generations, each new iteration honoring the foundation that Quentin and Rebecca had built. Their love story became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren, a reminder that the best things in life are worth taking chances for. And on certain summer evenings, when the wind blew just right across the Kansas prairie, some said you could still feel their presence. Two souls who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful that would last forever. Two people who proved that love, real love, can conquer doubt and fear and create a legacy that transcends time itself. The story of the cowboy and the Boston lady who became partners in every sense of the word. The story of doubts erased and a love that never wavered. The story of home found in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected person, creating the most extraordinary life. Their story, perfect and complete, lived on.